Hello and welcome to the 7th episode of Tech Horizons. My name is Madeleine Skillen. I'm the Regional Marketing Manager at Procore Technologies, and in today's episode, we'll be covering digital twins. I'm joined by the Queen of Digital Twins herself, CEO of BY's, Cristina Savian. Hi Cristina, how are you doing today?
Hi Madeleine, how are you? I'm good, thanks.
I'm good too, thank you. I normally start off these podcasts by just going straight into the question, which is, what led you to the world of digital transformation and indeed digital twins?
Okay, so it's a journey that exactly started just less than 6 years ago. So 6 years ago this month, I opened my company in London.
My hometown.
Yeah. And so I was living in London and I spent over 20 years at the time in construction, mostly civil infrastructure. And I just left one of the biggest, software technology company at the time. And I was like, what's next for me? Mm-hmm. So it's when I decided to kind of use my knowledge and experience, both on the ground, but also from the technology point of view, and see how I could help other companies to, break into the market or digitally transform. The digital twin angle kind of started a few months after. It was at the back of the fall of the Morandi Bridge in north of Italy on the 14th of August 2018. A part of the Morandi Bridge in north of Italy collapsed suddenly and 42 people died. I used to live in London at the time, and I remember like my mom calling me and say, bridge collapse. I mean, anyone could have been, my family member and friends could have been on the bridge on that day. I was myself on the bridge on the exact same day a year earlier. For someone that has been driving digital transformation in the industry for over a decade at that time, it was something like, I cannot let this happen. So I say to myself, you know what? There is a much bigger purpose to what I do every day. And if I can prevent that from happening again, or even just a tiny bit as a part of the life cycle, to prevent that from happening, then you know what, my life will be worth it. And I start looking into what could have prevented that from happening. And I start hearing about, digital twins. At the time, there were no publications on the topic. So I start literally ringing every single person who had white hair. And I just said, what do you think this, technology can do, to our, built assets? And then one thing led to another. I was invited to do an evening lecture, which was live stream recorded. So, a bit of pressure at the time from the UCL Bartlett, School of Construction. And then I decided to do it probably on a topic that I never heard of it. And that was digital twins with, applied to our built assets. It was the same week of the Gemini principles being launched in the UK, and everything kind of kicked off. After that, a lot of people referred me as like the knowledgeable person on the topic, so start coming to me, and I had to learn about it. I moved to Australia in the meantime for quite a few years, and I just basically gained this like experience on, at the same time as this trend was basically coming to the market, to what is the opportunity? What's the opportunity that this new, technology advancement, this new approach can do to our built assets?
And the rest is history, as they say.
The rest is history. 6 years later, a countless of number of podcasts on the topics, countless number of articles, thought leadership pieces. I now pretty much got hired by all the big technology companies in the last few years to write about these topics and how they can be, implemented using, their products. I chaired all the digital twin conferences around the world on this topic. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah, you're definitely a regular on the stage. I see you at many of the conferences. Indeed, it's how we kind of got to know each other as well. And I love the fact that you kind of entered this realm of construction off the back of something that really was a personal catalyst as well. I think often we don't understand the impact that having a safe construction site can have on the direct lives that we're living. So although under very unfortunate circumstances, the fact that you were so driven and so moved by that moment and it spurred you on to do what you're doing today I really think is very inspiring. Moving on to digital twins then, I would love to know in layman's terms, because there's often a lot of confusion about what digital twins is. What's the difference between digital twins and BIM?
Okay. If I only had a penny for every single time someone asks me that question. Okay. So the terminology is confusing. And I'm just going to make a statement that comes from one of the people that has been basically leading, this, trend and the education on this trend. We're never going to solve this problem. The terminology is confusing and it will always be confusing. That's it. Okay. This is because the terminology itself started from the manufacturing industry, back in 2003. Mm-hmm. It was cloned during a product life cycle, management course from University of Michigan. And you can immediately understand that, creating a digital replica of our, products, when it comes to manufacturing, is kind of easy. Life cycles are much, much more smaller and there's not as many people and it's not complex. And a lot of the times it's not as sequential as, it's construction. When we start implementing and applying this concept to a much wider, complex industry and fragmented industry like construction, you can immediately understand that there is a reason why it's so confusing. A lot of people are calling and using this terminology to describe a very large amount of outputs, depending on if they're in design, construction, asset management, operations. I always try to simplify doesn't really matter. I think by now there are probably hundreds of definitions, some of them conflicting with each other. I don't think we'll ever solve this problem of the definition. We'll never come up with a one unique solution. The way I like to think about it is the concept is simple. We have we build, we are from construction, we build our world. We want to analyze and improve our built assets. We cannot do that as such, right? We need to find a way and a form to analyze and mimic what our built assets. So we can improve, we can analyze them and try to understand what we can do better. So we can use digital replicas, okay? It's very, very, very simple. But we've been doing and creating digital replicas of our built assets for 30 years, something like that, since, the advent of CAD, computer-aided design. So that's not really where, the news is coming. What's new is the fact that technology advancements these days allowed us not only to create a digital replica, but if we go back to the original, definition, create a two-way synchronization between the built assets and our digital replica. So we kind of maintain it, it's up to date, it's live, it has a feed of information and a connection between the digital and the physical.
In terms of the challenges, you actually touched upon some of those just now in terms of the fragmentation and the complexity of the construction industry. What do you think are the biggest challenges for people that are trying to implement digital twins within their processes?
So I think it's okay for me to share this. So last week I was at McKinsey conference here in Dubai. Mm-hmm. So you can accept it was, were very well attended by pretty much all the CEO and, CTOs and all the C-levels for either all of the engineering firms, design firms, construction firms, and pretty much also a lot of the design, software companies. And of course, there was a digital twin roundtable. And for me, it's been so many years, right? And certainly I can see slightly, a maturity in the market that we're trying to understand and now trying to figure out, what it is or what is not. But amongst, C execs, they're not specialists, right? They're generalists running their own companies and they have so many things in their mind. And this concept was really, really difficult for them to understand what it is and what it does,
So I'm not alone.
You're not alone, but I think what was very interesting is the moderator of the panel asked a question at the beginning of the roundtable and say who is thinking about implementing digital twins and who is, currently doing it. Pretty much everyone of the 40 people in the room raised their hand. Then there was a panel discussion. Then I couldn't help myself to ask the first question and kind of challenge some of the discussion. And then we discussed more at the end of the conversation. He asked the same question. Nobody could raise their hand and offer insights on real case studies and success stories about implementations of, the use of digital twins, which immediately, is, we don't want to come across as we don't know what it is. We don't want to come across as, we're not knowledgeable enough, right? And we heard this technology, we know we're doing something in the company with it, but we don't really share. That's why I raise a hand. When you start going into deeper mode, the conversation, what it is and what is not, what is actually doing to their business, you immediately understand that you actually are not entirely sure. You're entirely sure what success looks like. So you asked me, what are the biggest challenges? The biggest challenges at the moment, if you think about it, creating a digital, let's think about a greenfield asset, which is the easiest case, right? During the design phase, you collect a lot of information. You can keep them during the construction phase and use it a lot, during asset management operations, which could be as simple as it should perform this way and it's doing something completely different to, it was designed this way, this was used. And then, you can basically action, and make, decisions, after. So if you use the simple, example, you can immediately see that you probably spend a lot more resources during the CapEx phase to collect those informations for a long-term return of investment, okay? The challenging part is each one of us is our CapEx and OpEx phases have been, the same forever, and the way how we procure assets has been the same forever. Each one of us works in a very, very small part of the life cycle, right? So very few amount of people from the design look at what happens in construction. Construction knows what happens in asset management operation because they just move on to the different, So it's very challenging as a concept to kind of say, okay, but if I spend more resources here and set these KPIs, maybe in a few years' time, I will receive a return of investment. How do you assess it? How do you calculate in who's ultimately he's going to go there and track all of these metrics that you set yourself has been, your key success metrics to your digital twin implementation. So the challenges that we have are the very long fragmented life cycle, which we just need to accept. It is what it is. Even the big, very, very different phases of CapEx and OpEx with a very key points of CapEx to OpEx, handover, and kind of the entire management of our asset kind of completely changed and completely switched.
It's interesting that you say that the fragmentation of information poses an issue or a challenge for digital twins, because everybody that I have on this podcast, in whatever kind of space of their expertise they're addressing, talks about the fragmentation of data and information. And it's not that we have a loss of the information and data, but we're really struggling to marry it up at each stage of that project life cycle. So, what you're saying right now is going to resonate with people beyond those that are just interested in digital twins. We talked about the challenges. I'd love to now talk about the opportunities, because digital twins, although you said there's been some challenges in realizing ROI straight away, there is some great benefits to implementing digital twins. So could you maybe talk a little bit about those?
So the opportunity I see is like any other technology advancement, right? Digital twins we couldn't create them years ago. Now we can, okay? So technology advancement allowed us nowadays to create these digital replicas, to assign, some very clear, fidelity and frequency of our information, allows us to integrate systems, allows us to know more. Okay. The biggest opportunity that I see in implementation is obviously climate change, okay, and sustainability. How are we going to meet those goals that we kind of already know is too late if we don't track anything? So it's about collecting this information that allows us to be, think about, you ask me, in terms of a practical, example. If meeting my sustainability goal is about reducing X, my carbon footprint, in whatever transported material to site, anything that, you are doing, you immediately understand that I need to track it somewhere. Okay. But it's not just tracking as a one-off exercise, it's a continuous tracking. So you are going to create this kind of digital live replica of whatever process or whatever built asset, you are creating and maintaining alongside to kind of keep tracking the same metrics, which allows you to actually say, you know what, I think I'm going the right direction. Let's be honest, these days, still, we don't really know how we calculate this, we calculate carbon, right? So the biggest opportunity that I see in implementing this, the digital twin concept is about tracking for sustainability purposes, anything that we are doing. Construction is the biggest contributor, to climate change. 40%. We can fix the problem. And I really don't understand why we're not working hard enough. You say, from the beginning, you say, oh, this is great. You start, from something very personal. You start working and, in this field and kind of, evolving. But the way I see it is I really don't understand why these days kids have this, inspired to work in, don't get me wrong, there's so many, industries. But for somehow we're struggling to attract the talent. They're really going to solve the biggest challenge that this world is facing, which is, climate change. And it's we have the opportunity in construction to really make a massive contribution by cutting our carbon, emission production. And we really need smart minds to start working on these problems. So it's about improving our society overall. It's very simple to understand when you're talking to a doctor, and it's like, oh, he's a medical professional, he's saving lives. Yeah, because what are we doing? We cannot live without our buildings. We cannot live without our infrastructures. So why are we not doing more for the world that's surrounding us? Why, and I see so many, and I have so many of this discussion at, many of the conferences, around the world. And I'm like, we are the designers and the users at the same time. Yeah. And somehow we forget that we are doing the little pieces of the puzzle. Each one of us, regardless, yourself, every single of us is making a contribution towards our society. And it's about doing the best, each day and trying to improve it, improving that. So it's, I don't know, it's very interesting. I see myself and I strive, to add a lot of other very passionate, individuals, like myself. We are the doctor of our built environment. And we're doing our best.
That analogy. That analogy, you're the doctors of your built environment. I love that. It's not actually something that I've come across before. It was funny because yesterday I was actually hosting a panel and the question came up about talent attraction because the construction industry is suffering from, as you know, a shortage of skilled labour. And the question came up about whether investing in technology is really going to attract, the newer generations, the digitally natives. And I think whilst my response was, it's a little bit more complex than that, what Gen Zs are now demanding of their employers is that they share a common vision when it comes to what is your ethical standpoint on X, Y, and Z? What is your environmental standpoint on X, Y, and Z? Sustainability really plays into their decision-making process when they're analysing which companies they want to, work for, as well as the careers that they want to pursue. And I think that implementing technology that is going to allow you to better track your emissions and the impact that you're having on the environment will definitely stand in good stead when it shows a commitment. And we talk about a commitment to reaching and achieving these net zero goals. Speaking of innovations, actually, I'd love to touch upon AI because that's a new advanced innovation technology. And there is some crossover between AI and digital twins. How do you see the two marrying up?
Well, in the last 6 to 8 months, people don't reach out to me asking for a digital twin strategy anymore. They ask for an AI strategy.
Really?
Yeah. But guess what? Behind, you still need to create your, you still need to digital transform. You still need to figure out what digital information do you need. You still need to structure the information that allows to, that can be analyzed and can be queried. So we are in the same point. I think the advent of AI is certainly a massive, push forward because it's exactly what I said earlier. The asset management operations, they just want the ChatGPT, right? So it's about trying to understand is wherever using a digital approach, wherever you want to embed it into a much wider, AI strategy, it's all about the digital information that you hold about your built asset. And we hold about, our cities. So it's about collecting those very useful information and structure so it can be reused, after. But yeah. It's still going back to the same problem. We are the least digitized industry in our society. So we have a fundamental problem that we need to solve first before AI can be implemented.
Fundamental problems that need to be solved, I guess, refer back to getting the foundations right. And sometimes building the right foundations relates to data integrity and accuracy. And we talked about the fragmentation of information. How do you see data accuracy and integrity playing a part in not just digital twins, but obviously leveraging AI, because AI is reliant upon us inputting the most accurate type of data and then them being able to, I say them, AI being able to generate trends and predictions off the back of that. Any commentary on that?
If you put rubbish in, there's rubbish out. I mean, let's be honest. If you don't put very good data, it's still not going to query. It's not going to come out with the answer that you want. It's still going to rely on the, information that you give.
Bad ingredients lead to a disgusting cake.
It's, and there is not much you can do about it. So it's about... and it's a very, very challenging, topic, the, data integrity. And it's also one of the challenges that we have. What happens is, even think about, I started my career in 1998 as a surveyor. Okay, that's how I started in the industry. But if you think about it, we use surveyors, during the design phase, the construction, we don't believe in the information that was collected before, so we collect it again. Do the asset management operation? Do we really, rely on the information that someone collected years ago? No, we don't. We don't trust it, right? So we do it and we, collect it and analyze it again. So immediately understand that data integrity is a massive, massive, massive challenge. But at the same time is how can we look in? I mean, I saw so many attempts, to try to, solve these problems, even like with blockchain. Once is our data is kind of trusted, we should be able to trust along the way. Is it really the solution? I don't know. I'm still not convinced. So it's about... I think it's about anything. Do we need 100% our information correct, or having information that we know is close enough, and it kind of the way how much it costs us to, going back to the return of investment. The biggest failures at the moment is digital twins that cost more than the asset itself. Yeah, because he kind of forgot that it needs to have a return on investment and that it has a cost associated to it. And then if you invest more resources, then the asset itself can defeat the purpose in the first place, right?
And resources aren't always physical. They can be time resources as well.
Exactly, time resources. So sometimes I feel like, going back to the fidelity and the frequency, yes, maybe, for cars manufacturers, it makes sense to have sensors and send data and have like feed of information, which is very constant. For our built assets, probably is not the case. So it's a fidelity and, a frequency that just is justifiable because it has a cost itself. And we need to make sure that, he has, it brings value, right? So it's about making sure that those, information that we are collecting might not be 100%, but based on the resources that we decided to allocate, it's good enough. In most cases, it's better enough than not having information, because I'm still going back to, we can use going back again, the bridge, the Morandi Bridge, or we can use, the Grenfell Tower. A year early, I was in London as well. So, it was terrible. And you immediately understand how that example, which by the way, completely has, changed the UK, real estate industry. And don't get me started on the insurance premiums on that, but it's completely, changing. And you immediately understand how that was just down to the fact that the information were not, maintained, which during the life cycle, which we know that, now called the golden thread of information, but, those information are not. Even if it was data at 50, 60% of accuracy, maybe it could have prevented the accident. It could have prevented the accident in the Morandi Bridge, and it could have prevented the accident, in the Grenfell. And sometimes, we all make decisions on imperfect information. It's trying to make those decisions, do our best, and trying to, as I said, is what is the level of information that we need, which is just enough, it's justifiable. We know it's going to bring more benefits than, the cost itself.
What I love about working within the kind of construction industry tech space is that I feel like I'm having an impact on the building of the communities around me. But I also do think that sometimes we become so distanced from that we forget that people are then going to live in those environments. They're going to be interacting, and their safety post project completion is of the utmost importance. And we're dictating that as we start going through the process of building the environment in which somebody will eventually live. And I think they're really important points that you raised about Grenfell, obviously being British. I remember it myself, it was very tragic, but things like that are happening all around the world, and the data accuracy piece is just so incredibly important. I think we often talk about it impacting our profitability or our productivity, but it's not just that. In fact, more important than all of that is actually the lives of the people within those environments in the end. So some great points. You've had such a varied career, experience in the UK, experience in Australia, obviously experience now in the Middle East. As a last question, what advice would you give to people that are looking to emulate your career success and potentially get into the world of construction as well?
Okay. Interesting. I was not expecting this question.
It's my favourite question to ask. I always end it on.
So it's interesting. If you had asked me when I was 15 years old, when I decided what career, I was going to take, that this would have been my, career up to date, I probably wouldn't have, believed. As I said, it's kind of I had these careers, and it kind of, I don't know, it made sense for me. It was my job. I knew I was making the difference. I knew I liked it. So I would say for me, maybe in the early days, definitely, I didn't have the purpose that he has nowadays. Life sometimes brings you to places where you don't expect. Years ago, I never, expected to become an international expert, been named, one of the most influential people internationally on this topic.
The queen of digital twins.
I know. I can tell you this. And there is the new top influential list that is going to be published in a couple of weeks. So I'm like, let's see if I make the 4th years in a row. But it's interesting how it kind of, I don't know, it wasn't by design. I didn't design my career. It just happened. I just followed where my heart was taking me. And I think as I said, I kind of always wanted to make the difference. And sometimes we forget, and it's like, okay, what do we want to be remembered? Once we're gone, what is our legacy and what do we want to live in this world? And I kind of decided to just set it for myself. And I just say, even if I know, I don't need prizes, I don't need anything. All I need is I know that I contributed and trying to make a better world, make this world a better place than when I was born into, right? And that's it. That's all and they kind of followed and led me. And every time I see something that doesn't sound right or is not good enough, then is when I start screaming and I bring all my Italian, blood out. And it kind of, I don't know, probably what brought me on the, front stage, on this topic. I certainly didn't expect to kind of being asked, to kind of lead, this the change, this in the in this trend in the industry. But the more I do it, and the more people keep asking me for it, so I kind of happen. So to answer your question, what would you advise to anyone who wants to, come into construction? Unfortunately, we don't have this big massive inspirational people, maybe because we don't make enough money in construction, and that's probably why we don't have these big iconic figures that are like, oh, I want to be her, or I want to be him. So it's kind of difficult to say, oh, you need to come into construction because you kind of become this person. So I would say you come into construction because you want to make you want to make better this society for everyone. And every one of us is born with a talent, and some of us have the talent to be doctors and and to have those skill sets to and what it takes, and some people like us love this kind of just world and want to make the world a better place in terms of what it looks like, what it sounds like, and are inspired by that.
Well, as you said earlier, you may not be a medical doctor, but you are a doctor of the built environment, and you're certainly making waves in the Middle East. So thank you so much. I can't wait to see what you do over the next 18 months during your time. And thank you again for being on the podcast. I can't wait for our listeners to hear all about digital twins.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.